Hi, this is Drew Billeter again, ED 854, Chapter 7, the communication process. Uh, like many of you, you're probably just as excited as I am to have your last video be done, but I have enjoyed the videos. When you talk about communication process and nonverbal um, communication, I've learned a lot about myself as far as fidgeting, as far as sitting up straight, as far as speaking into the camera. So it has been very beneficial to me. And chapter 7 was also a very interesting chapter that I'm sure all of us encounter at some point throughout the school year, where communication is very important. As an athletic director, communication is huge for me, making sure that I always are letting my bus drivers, my coaches, our players, our parents, our administrators, making sure that everybody always knows what's going on and who's doing what is extremely important. So communication throughout the year is something that I deal with a lot and something that I can always improve on. There's never too much communication, in my opinion. Double, triple checking everything, always sending out an extra email or a note or a phone call are all important things that happen throughout the year, especially for an AD. Down here at Coach's Clinic right now, so hopefully I will be able to pick up some new tips and ideas on how to communicate better, not only with my players, but parents and other teachers. For this assignment, I picked out a situation that we had at our school, probably just like everyone else. At the end of the school year, everything gets really busy, and there's a lot of things going on. There's awards banquets, there's programs, there's graduations, there's just a lot going on. Our superintendent had just gotten done having hip surgery, so she'd been out of the building for a couple weeks. So before she was getting ready to leave, she did a really good thing where she brought in all the janitors, the principal, the guidance counselor, myself, and wanted to make sure that everybody got on the same page before the end of the year came. So the three janitors, custodians, were all sitting on one side of her office, with her sitting by her desk, and the principal, myself, and the guidance counselor sitting across from the janitors. So I had a very good view of all the nonverbal communication that was going on. Basically, our superintendent wanted to just make sure that everything was covered for the whole rest of the year. She had a big dry erase board that she had brought in, put it right on her wall, and it basically had everything that's supposed to happen day by day, job responsibilities, duties, dates, when everything is supposed to happen. And when she was going through this, I remember watching and observing a few of our custodians and their body language and the gestures they were making when the list of things were being told to them what they needed to get done. And to their defense, there was a lot going on at the end of the year. We also had a kitchen renovation where we had to completely gut our kitchen so that they could work on it over the summer. So we had a lot of things going on. But the one thing I thought our superintendent did a really good job of is there was jobs and responsibilities for each person and what they were supposed to get done, and it was all done on a timely basis. So I thought that was a really good job of her explaining what she expected from them. We all met as a group, so everyone could put inputs in, or maybe she left something out that needed to be discussed. So having everybody in there was a good group discussion. Like I said, she came up with the idea to, as far as communication process, came up with the idea to put a board on with what's going to be happening the next 2 to 3 weeks and what needs to get done. She transmitted it by having a meeting with us administrators and the custodians, and she did it face-to-face so that she could explain everything that she wanted done. As far as the receivers go, our head custodian, you could notice his displeasure with the meeting. To me, seems like a person that likes to do things his own way and likes to get things done on his time schedule. And watching his body language showed to me that his displeasure or his non-enthusiasm for the idea that she'd come up with. He was slouching down in his chair, rolling of eyes, kind of using his hands, almost being thrown up in the air like, we don't have time to do this, or, this is too much. So you could see there was a lot of nonverbal communication that he was putting back towards her. There was also another janitor that was sitting upright. He was making eye contact. He was nodding his head. He was letting our superintendent know that what she was telling him, he was understanding, and that he was on board with what she was presenting. As far as Proximus, we were all in the same room, so how far apart we were from each other really didn't come into play. We were all, I would say, in the personal zone, and as far as our chapter 7 goes, we were all 2 to 4 feet away, I would say. Also, when reading through the chapter, the chronomics is concerned with use of time, such as being late or early. Everybody was on time. It seemed like everybody was involved and understood how many things had to happen. The things that, if I was a superintendent, that I noticed was a lot of our janitors had bad nonverbal communication as far as the way they conducted themselves, the way that they sat, the way they communicated back and gave feedback. It was not positive. It was all negative. It was, we don't have time for this. It was almost disgruntled about having to do these different things. So those are some of the things that I observed. Communication is just so important in a school, and making sure that you present it in the right way is very important as well. Being positive, being persuasive, like this chapter talked about, are things that I think are very important that most good administrators always do. Also, when reading back through here, it talks about some administrators' advice. Some things that I liked were pictures worth 1,000 words. To me, I can always gain more from when I see things and compared to when somebody just tells me something. Making good eye contact and making sure that everybody's on board and not carrying on. I feel like that's something that I need to work on, and being precise, to the point, and not rambling on, but get right to what's important, and only talking about the issues that you really want to get across to the receiver. Those were some good advice that I had read in the chapter. I also like the diagram that showed where the superintendent was and how the communication, how it flowed down. I thought that was very unique and something that I hadn't necessarily seen. I think it's very important that those chain of commands are the way they are. Some other things that I think that I do, or that I've seen other people do in this meeting, is when you use hand gestures, when you don't slouch, you sit up straight, you're neat, you're well-groomed, you are dressed for the occasion, I guess you would say. I think those are very important things that dictate how the receiver receives your message. So I think that's another part of communication that I think is very important. Some other things that I read about in the chapter that I just kind of wanted to talk about, since my illustration of going to a board meeting and watching the nonverbal communication wasn't there. The open door policy and employee meetings, I think those are so important. Our principal once a week sends out Dunn's Dialogue, and it just goes through what's going on next week. It talks about who's covering lunch duty, who is detention duty, who's covering the gate, who's just all the upcoming things that are so important that people forget about when they get busy teaching. And people do get busy, and I think it's the job of an administrator to always make sure that everybody knows what's going on, and that requires good communication skills. And that's one thing our principal does a very good job of, is every week he is always sending out the Dunn's Dialogue and he is religious about it. He never forgets. It's always at 3 o'clock every Friday. So I think that's very important. Once again, just to conclude, communication is very important in schools and something that we all need to do a better job of throughout the year, even though we get busy. We can't assume that people know what's going on. We need to make sure that they know what's going on. So thank you, and hopefully you enjoy the video.